Quiet Revolution was a time of advocacy for French language rights and modernization in Quebec's government and Greater Canada. During the 1960s and 70s, conflict over French rights, education, government secularization, and openings for French Canadians in higher-skilled jobs took place. As a result of this time of conflict, bills were passed such as Bill 101, making education in Quebec in French, and the Official Language Rights Act, which made Canada a bilingual country. The Quiet Revolution led from conflict over French rights to new laws strengthening French culture, higher-skilled jobs, and education for people all across Quebec. These are compromises that helped keep Canada as one and are impacting the economy and French culture in Quebec today. For most of the 1600s and 1700s, Quebec City was a French settlement. In the late 1700s, France and England fought over lands in North America in places such as Quebec. In 1759, British forces attacked French forces on the Plains of Abraham outside Quebec City. British forces won the battle, taking over Quebec and the rest of Canada. This change in power would affect Quebec and Canada throughout all the years until the Quiet Revolution. In the years following the battle on the Plains of Abraham, followed by unprepared and badly trained French nationalists were easily defeated by British Canadian forces. Tensions between Anglophones and Francophones in Quebec continued growing. Throughout the 18 and early 1900s, Quebec's government was mostly conservative and dominated mainly by Anglophone politicians. Most French Canadian citizens lived isolated in impoverished rural communities and had strong ties with the Roman Catholic Church. Into the mid-1900s, many people across Canada and worldwide were unaware of the underdeveloped and undereducated lifestyle of many French Canadians in Quebec. Into the late 1950s and early 1960s, many French Canadian citizens were moving into Quebec's major cities, urbanizing the province. This era of change unveiled Quebec's unstable economy and the divides that had been separating it. In 1959, the Premier of Quebec, Marcel Duplessis, died, ending an era of conservative rule under his party, Union Nationale. Many people in Quebec were ready for a change because of the lack of economic growth. Parti Liberal's candidate, Jean Lesage, ran for Premier under the campaign slogan C'est le temps que l'on change, meaning it's time for a change. This slogan won the hearts of many voters. In the following year, the General Assembly election in Quebec voted in Parti Liberal under Jean Lesage, the first party other than Union Nationale to be elected in over 2 decades. This election led to government secularization, making Quebec more relevant to the modern society of Canada. The election of Parti Liberal brought forward the goals of modernization in Quebec and uniting the province for a more equal society. This election would change the history of Quebec, paving a way for the Quiet Revolution. During the time after the election, many French Canadian citizens started to speak their mind about French language rights due to the new political climate. This drew worldwide attention to the growing tensions in Quebec. Many people protested for their rights as citizens with French heritage, citizens known as Québécois. They went by the slogan Maîtres chez nous, or masters in our own house. They protested to restore French language and culture along with the modernization of Quebec's economy and educational system. They believed that losing their culture would be losing who they were as Québécois. The Quiet Revolution, named for its mainly peaceful protests and marches, promoted French language rights, better education, higher-skilled jobs for French Canadians throughout Quebec and Canada.
The Quiet Revolution is a period of rapid change in Quebec when the province, what we can call, kind of modernizes, and it kind of catches up with its education systems and government systems with North America.
In 1962, Hydro-Quebec, a hydroelectric company, was the first major business to allow French in the workspace. This was a significant compromise that helped secure French culture's role in Quebec. This compromise also supported the ideas of restoring French culture, in the end spurring more conflict. During this time, Bill 101 was passed, stating that all public schools in Quebec had to be taught in French. However, all citizens of Quebec whose parents had been educated in English were given the choice to go to an English public school. This bill also stated that all government operations had to be conducted in French. These compromises would strengthen the undereducated French community into a stronghold for French culture in Canada. The growing French nationalist movement in Quebec, a result of the Quiet Revolution, raised the question of Quebec's sovereignty. Political parties such as Bloc Québécois and Parti Québécois led the separatist efforts. In 1969, the Official Language Rights Act was passed, making Canada a bilingual country speaking both English and French.
And they argued that you can't separate your culture, your language, from your culture. If you lose the French language, we will lose French culture.
This was one of the compromises made by Canada's Parliament to work towards keeping Canada together, due to the rising separatist efforts in Quebec. In spite of this, Parti Québécois, led by René Lévesque, proposed a referendum of sovereignty in Quebec in 1980. The people of Quebec were given a chance to vote to negotiate a new constitutional agreement with the rest of Canada based on the equality of nations, as written in the referendum draft. The result of the vote was 60% no and 40% yes. Although most Canadians thought the vote would lean towards yes, many people in Quebec were proud to be Canadian. In 1995, the new Premier of Quebec, Jacques Parizeau, former leader of Parti Québécois, promised his supporters to propose a referendum of separatism after the many failed efforts of the former Premier. The referendum to secede from Canada ended with thin margins, and the yes or we side at 49.42% and the no or no side at 50.58%. In the end, Quebec voted not to secede from Canada, ending an era of separatism.
They didn't. The thing was a victim of its own success. Everything that René Lévesque and others like him had said that Ottawa would never give us, that the English would never give us, we got.
Quebec has changed in many ways since the Quiet Revolution. Due to the integration of French-speaking Canadians in the higher-skilled workplace and the modernization of Quebec's government, the economy has improved. Although many Anglophone businesses left Quebec in the 1960s and 70s because of the strong push for French language rights, Quebec's economy has still grown and improved since. The rate of unemployment in Quebec was at a high in the 1940s and 50s before the Quiet Revolution. Since the Quiet Revolution, the unemployment rate has continued to decline. In 2017, the unemployment rate was at an all-time low, around 4%. One of the biggest compromises of the Quiet Revolution was the Official Language Rights Act of 1969. Since then, the number of Quebec citizens who are fluent in both English and French has grown greatly. As well, the people who are fluent in both English and French have had the highest growth in income. Today, not speaking French in Quebec is almost impossible. Everything from restaurant interactions to business transactions is in French. Quebec's license plates say, Je me souviens, or I will remember, to symbolize the importance of their French heritage. The 1960s Quiet Revolution rose out of the conflict between Anglophones and Francophones in Quebec. Since then, Quebec has changed and reformed. The compromises achieved by the Quiet Revolution set new goals for cultural respect and unity in Quebec and Greater Canada.
We've got to stay together. We've got to find each other now. That is how we can learn